All right, hello, Facebook. This is Tommy Valentine. By now, you're probably used to these episodes appearing on your timeline, but you may be confused about two things that I want to clear up right at the start of today's episode. First, it's 10 a.m., not 1 p.m., and that is because we are recording some bonus episodes here. Second is you may notice that this says episode 24, which may throw some of you off that are loyally checking into all of these because this week we are planning on finishing the last of our 55 episodes in this series. Over the course of this series, we've been amazed at how dependable and reliably our guests have been able to check in. Uh, However, out of the 55, we've had 3 episodes that have had to be postponed or canceled due to guest availability. We promised 55 episodes. It's our goal to deliver 55 episodes, not only for the sponsors that supported those episodes, but also for the historic record. And so we wanted to follow through on that. So today, tomorrow, and Thursday, we're going to be doing 3 bonus episodes. Today, we're talking to Katie Williams from the CVB. Tomorrow, we'll be talking to Mocha Johnson from Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement. And then on Thursday, we'll be speaking to Dr. Lakeisha Gant of the Clark County School Board of Education. So these are special bonus episodes. Don't be thrown by the number. Don't be thrown by the time. It still works just like normal. So if you have a question or a comment, something that you'd like to share with Katie, or maybe you've never really understood the CVB, maybe you have a question, just go ahead and comment below this video live, and we'll be able to include it in today's broadcast. Today's broadcast will last until 11 a.m. And so this gives us an opportunity to really have a robust conversation with Katie, and we really appreciate her making time on her calendar to do this. A couple final notes before this program begins. If this is your first experience with Historic Athens, we want to let you know that about halfway through the program, we'll give you more information on how you can get plugged in to our 52-year-old 501c3 nonprofit. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, we want to acknowledge our sponsor. Each week of the 11 weeks, we had a sponsor step up so that we could document and explore this unique and often difficult moment in Athens history. Episode 24, which was originally scheduled weeks ago, was to be brought to you by First American Bank and Trust. So that is what today's bonus episode will be supported by. We really appreciate everyone associated with First American Bank and Trust. For those of you that have been following these episodes, you know that our ability to secure our SBA loan and our PPP loan and keep our lights on and our staff employed, that all happened at First American. And so we really appreciate everyone involved over there. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest. You'll get to know her. You'll get to know the CVB, the Athens CVB, and what they do. And if you have any questions, feel free to participate as we go. So one moment, please. I'm going to make some switches here, and then we will have her on screen. All right. All right, Katie, hello. 1 second. Let me go ahead and switch on your mic. One moment. All right. Very good. Katie, hi. How are you?
Hi, Tommy. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Katie, we really appreciate you joining in here with us. You have such an interesting story to tell, and let's go right down into it. So this moment was a strange one for everyone. It was very strange for those of us that had already been leading organizations and let's say had our sea legs. But this came about right at the same exciting moment that you were coming back here to Athens, where we were where you were being set up in your role. We had, I think, some of our first initial conversations, if that, and then the storm hit. So why don't you start by introducing yourself, introducing the Athens CVB, and then we can get into that very unique timeline.
Yes, well, I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Katie Williams. I am the new director at the Athens Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I am a graduate of UGA, so I did spend some time in Athens several years ago, but thrilled to be back. And prior to coming to Athens, I had been with Discover Dunwoody, the Convention and Visitors Bureau for Dunwoody and Perimeter Center area, for 10 years, and was excited to be offered the wonderful opportunity of coming to Athens to be the director here. at the end of January. So of course the outlook and world looked very different at the end of January. My first day in Athens was March 16th. So
Wow.
the Monday after shelter in place began. And of course, it was a very interesting first day at an organization, but specifically an organization that relies so heavily on travel and tourism
Mm.
and events and conventions. And within 48 hours, all of that was canceled.
Mm.
So it's been a very interesting, to say the least, start to a new job in a new city. But we're moving forward.
Well, and you know, you were announced in your position to a lot of fanfare and acclaim. Everyone that kind of looked into your background was very excited. You are succeeding, if I understand correctly, Chuck Jones, who defined that position for a really long time. Chuck hasn't left the orbit of your organization, but is working more directly in the Classic Center side of things. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, Chuck had been the CVB director for more than 20 years and has done a wonderful job. And I've known Chuck for many, many years just through Georgia Tourism and attending conferences. And um, yes, he is still here. He is
Yeah.
now the vice president of sales and marketing at the Classic Center.
That's right. And, you know, normally when, you know, I took over a role that my predecessor had been there for 15 years. Normally when you take over a role, people say, oh, you're stepping into very large shoes. In the case of Chuck, that may actually be factually true. He's about the same size as an NBA player. But none, jokes aside, it is always strange to walk in and take on a role that's been defined by someone for more than a decade. Um, Before you knew that COVID was going to be a thing and you were accepting this position, uh, what were the things you were most excited about in taking on a legacy role like that?
That's a great question. And I almost have to think back to that original 30, 60, 90-day plan that
Right.
very quickly went out the window. But we had a great team here at the CVB. We still do. Um, the the work that they were doing with brand marketing and sales was so exciting. And I was very excited and still am to learn the convention center side of tourism. That was going to be something new for me to learn, but really excited to work with marketing as well and to help build upon the work that has been done and kind of dive into some new areas of digital marketing and opportunities there. But then also just build the partnerships. I know, for example, the partnership with Historic Athens and the Welcome Center is one
right.
that there's so many ideas and ways that we can expand upon that foundation. So I was really looking forward to coming in and just kind of building on the great work that was already being done and kind of carry it into the future.
Yeah.
And that's still very much there, but we have also, the reality is we have had to scale back to kind of the bare bones as an organization because of the impact that it's had on our budget.
Right. Well, and that's, you know, I think we talked about on a prior episode with another guest that there's this old quote, I think it's attributed to Mike Tyson or another boxer, but it's the, you know, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And, or I think maybe the more polite one would be, if you want to make God laugh, make plans.
Yes.
And certainly a lot of us felt that way. Before we get to the changes that had to be made, I want to make sure that our audience has a thorough understanding of what a CVB is. I'd also love to hear some about your experiences in Dunwoody and how those experiences have shaped your perspective coming into this role. But let's start with just the Athens CVB. So if somebody's tuning in, all they've ever heard are those initials thrown around a couple times. Maybe they've seen, you know, I see Milton Leather's local historic giant. Chuck is a tall act to follow. So maybe they've seen Chuck walking around with his button, advocating for local tourism. But if somebody is watching this and they do not know what the CVB does, can you outline that for us, Katie?
Sure, it's a great question. So the CVB is the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it is the official destination marketing organization for Athens. And the purpose is to be a proactive marketing and sales organization to attract visitors, groups, meetings, attendees to Athens for the purpose of economic impact and economic development. We aim to put heads in beds, as we say, in the hotels. But it's more than just that. It's bringing people to our restaurants, to our shops, to our festivals, supporting our local makers, visiting the attractions. It's all about bringing people to Athens and promoting the community as a destination.
Yeah. So it is, you mentioned the Heads and Beds mission. I want to further dive into this CVB concept, because as you explained near the end of that initial description, some people may see the CVB and wonder, why would I care about tourism? Why would I care if a tourist is coming to town or not? Especially for folks in this town that may be confused about poverty levels, or maybe concerned about, maybe they're more focused on the music scene or the restaurant scene. But as you explained, your goal is to help attract people that then support that local music festival, or support that local restaurant, or support that local entrepreneur. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, so we often say in tourism that tourism is sort of the first step in economic development. And a strong tourism economy and visitors are going to come in and help support that local economy that our residents rely on for their jobs and for their businesses. Tourism in Athens it's responsible for almost 3,000 jobs with $65 million in payroll. So it's a huge driver for our local economy, and really important for giving people jobs. Think about the restaurants, the hotels, all of those businesses. There's a ripple effect with tourism, and so it's a huge. I mean, especially in a town like Athens that relies on and draws people here for festivals, for sporting events,
Yeah.
for for our music concert, live concerts, all of that. Tourism plays an important role in it.
Katie, I have a confession to make, which is that growing up, and not even just growing up, probably even still these days, I read too many comic books. And as a result of reading too many comic books, I have an unhealthy obsession with people's origin stories. How they ended up doing what they do. For example, I came into this role without formal historic preservation experience, but almost every week I realize, oh, that thing that I learned then, that's why I learned it, so that I can use it here. I mean, there's all those kind of experiences that build up for the role you're in. Katie, I doubt that when you were, 15, you were bitten by a radioactive tourist and it turned you into, some kind of superhero. But I'm sure that you had experiences both in college and out that helped put you on this path. Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
Sure. So it's interesting, and this is not a story I believe I've ever told anyone here in Athens yet. But in college, this is sort of that 6 degrees
Yeah.
example. In college, I went to Georgia, was a public relations major in Grady, and our senior year project, we worked with Athens Downtown Development Authority to create a marketing and PR plan for them. It was a group of about 8 of us, I think, and we worked with Linda was not the director at the time, somebody else, but it was a great chance for me to learn about community and what it meant to promote a community and to work with downtown merchants, and the importance that a downtown plays in tourism. Graduated college and went to work for a PR agency, which I thought was my dream, and anticipated spending my career there. But at the time I was living in South Georgia, Thomasville, Georgia. I'm not sure if you're a wonderful historic town, if you're familiar with it. And landed in a role down there that was tourism coordinator. And that is where my passion for tourism and really the role it can have on a community like Thomasville and like Athens, and the importance that it plays in supporting a downtown and a historic community, that's where it began. And I'm so passionate about bringing people together for the purpose of economic development, tourism being one part of that. But for me, my passion is around community collaboration, and how can we work together for the local economy, and tourism again just playing one role in that.
Thanks for sharing that. And you're right. That is an interesting kind of 6 degrees of separation between our mission, maybe just a 1 degree of separation, because you're ultimately working to attract people to Athens. But for that to work, Athens has to be an attraction. It has to be a
Yes,
destination. And what I've come to understand in this partnership with the CVB is that both at the municipal level, both locally and at the statewide level, uh, in the tourism world, it seems like a large value is placed on all things historic. That there's this world of heritage tourism, that people visit a town based on the way it looks and feels. I think those of us that grow up in Athens, it's a little like that Southern saying about a frog. Uh, I think it's like, a frog in boiling water, doesn't realize it's boiling until it's too late. You're in the water. I think in Athens, those of us that grow up in this great historic downtown with all these historic resources everywhere may not realize how unique that is, and what an attraction it can be. Is attracting people to our historic downtown and to the character of Athens one of the reasons you were excited to take this position?
absolutely. Because having been in Thomasville, and the passion I felt around a historic downtown and the sense of place that it creates, and the draw for people to come down and sort of have this authentic experience with the place, and then local merchants and local makers and local restaurants, and just that whole experience that it
Mm-hmm.
creates, is something special. And Athens has that. Not many communities have it. And then you layer that with the convention center, and with
Right.
the festivals and the music history that we have here. And then, of course, the university and the sports and the passion around that. Athens just is just this really unique mix of experiences and emotional connection that not many communities have. People have an emotional tie to Athens in some way, whether it's through a band that they saw here, or a restaurant that they like, Jittery Joe's. I mean, that's an emotional connection that
Right.
people know that brand. Creature Comforts beer, Terrapin, all of these brands that people are emotionally connected to. And then again, you layer that with the university, and certainly the emotion that's around that. It's really unique, and that's what had got me excited when I heard about this job and started thinking about the opportunity for tourism, and to move that into the future. It's got me really excited for what we could do here.
That's great. It's interesting. The term historic, we get questions on it all the time on what historic means. I tend to use a pretty broad definition of it and encourage people that if something seems historic to them, it may very well be historic. I know the formal definition is 50 years old or older. And my understanding, I think the Classic Center, if I'm remembering correctly, was founded in 95. And if so, I mean, as of this year, the Classic Center is halfway to historic itself, which is something that is hard to believe for so many of us that can remember when it first opened. Uh, you know, for someone in your line of work, how do you balance what the message is? I mean, I imagine you're working to different audiences, but I'm really interested in how your job works, because I imagine that there are some people out there that what's going to hook them into Athens is the historic nature of the town. But then there may be some people that want to come to Athens because of all the cutting edge entrepreneurs we have here, or all of the creature comforts, or the new restaurants, or new businesses. And Athens is a place that merges the old with the new. As a CVB, how do you decide what is the best foot to put forward in your marketing, in your messaging? How are those decisions made?
That's a great question, and one I'm learning here, and we've had to pivot during these times as well, because some of the things that are the usual draws for tourism aren't happening right now. So
Right.
music events and festivals are usually a really big draw for people to come in. But you always, and I believe you always start with research. So you look at how people are using your website, what content they're engaging with, how they're engaging with your social media, and you learn more about your audience and who they are and what brings them to you. And based on what I know here, the historical component, the music component, and the sports component are three of our biggest sort of audience drivers. And so you balance that with
Mm-hmm.
content creation and messaging, branding to target them. We are a regional destination, a drive market destination, so we're largely targeting Atlanta and the rest of Georgia. We're also tapping into our other drive markets: Greenville, Spartanburg, Nashville, and Birmingham being a few. And again, it's about promoting and creating this connection for an experience, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're all looking for when you travel. Is you want to go somewhere that's unique, it's going to give you an authentic experience, and Athens is going to do that in so many ways. And so the messaging and the audience may change a little, but the goal is always the same: to create an emotional connection with someone and tell them how they can have this really authentic experience in Athens. Right now, as I mentioned, we are pivoting our strategy and
Right.
promoting more outdoors. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for ways to safely get away for the day or for the weekend, perhaps,
Right.
but largely do things that allow for social distancing. And we've got some wonderful outdoor amenities here with the botanical gardens, our parks, Sandy Creek Nature
Yeah.
Center, and so we're heavily promoting and raising awareness around how people can get outdoors in Athens. Our trails are amazing amenities that have been invested in. And then the downtown as well. People can get out and safely walk around and have this authentic downtown historical experience. Um, so that's where we're focused on right now.
Yeah.
But I believe it starts with research, and then you create content and strategy around that to target the audiences.
So, Katie, we're in a moment here. We're just going to pivot to COVID-19 and specifically some of the scale backs we've talked about, some of the challenges we've talked about, some of the opportunities maybe. But the last area of general questioning I wanted to hit was, so you came to us from Dunwoody. I'd love for you to just, for our audience, so that they can get as excited as so many of us are about you being in this role, I'd love for you to talk about some of your milestones and highlights in this world of tourism, and maybe some of the uh, past experiences that you'd love to bring into play over here.
That's a great question. So in Dunwoody, it was a different experience starting there, because I was the first executive director
Oh,
when the bureau was formed. So the city of Dunwoody was incorporated as a city in 2008, and then the CVB was formed shortly thereafter. And so I was brought on, and there was only a board of directors and a set of bylaws. And so it was, it was a from scratch, ground up organization.
mm-hmm.
And I'm really proud of the work that we did and the team that we created, and the stakeholders that were involved for what we were able to do over 10 years. Some of my, I guess, greatest milestones there, and what I'm so proud of, I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
others would consider these the greatest achievements, but what I'm proud of is really back to that collaboration. The collaboration we were able to form with the Economic Development Office, the Chamber, and the Perimeter Community Improvement District. And we created together this master plan, again, based on research, founded in tourism research, for a Parks and Trails master plan. And I was really proud to see that being implemented. Part of that was also a wayfinding and gateway signage program that the CVB championed and moved forward. And again, I think that's so important for branding, especially in a place like Dunwoody, when 60% of the visitors think that they're in Atlanta. They don't
Right.
realize they're in Dunwoody. And so there was a huge branding brand awareness opportunity there that wayfinding could help address. But I look back and I'm just so proud of the way that we as a team kind of just put our heads down and did the work. And I'm now having to move that same thought process into this role. I came into this role thinking, gosh, I'm going to step into what is already a great organization. It's well established. They've got this, they're working this robust marketing plan. And now we are kind of back to square one, and we're going to rescale. So I'm sort of taking what I learned what it was like to start a bureau from scratch, and how do you scale a marketing strategy, and how do you kind of go after and start with prospecting for sales. And that's where we are. We're kind of back to, we're not back to square one, but in a lot of ways we're kind of having to go back, and we're gonna scale forward. But well, I think, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, it's interesting. It seems like then it seems very important that you had that experience in Dunwoody of starting from scratch, because it makes this moment that much less intimidating. If you had only ever worked in CVBs that operate at the volume that Athens does at times, and you hadn't had that, ground level experience, this might be more difficult for you than it's proven to be. Is that right?
Possibly, probably, yeah, likely. It's a challenge no matter how you look at it, but I'm taking the approach and being optimistic and working with our team to say, you know what, we've got to take the long range view here. And it's not just about the next 6 months or the next 18 months. Let's look at how are we going to move through the next 2 years? How are we going to move through the next 5 years? And certainly it's not going to take 5 years to get back there, but how do we use this as an opportunity to rescale and to try new things and learn some new efficiencies and take what was working really well and apply that as we move forward, and then kind of incorporate some new things that we're learning along the way.
Yeah. So, Katie, as promised, I wanted to dive fully into COVID. We've kind of talked around it. I mean, at this point in our lives, it mixes itself in with everything that everyone talks about. But I really want to dive head first. So you said your first day was in January, is that right? Or you were hired in January?
I was hired in January. My first day was March 16th. Wow. And certainly about the week before I started, it all happened so fast.
Right.
I mean, but it was like every day, it was just sort of just snowballing. And so about the week before I started, I had this realization that, okay, this is going to be very different. But of course, then you thought, okay, this is going to be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. And then, we're all going to be fine. And by the time I came in on Monday, we were in shelter in place, and the Classic Center had gone from no restrictions on groups to a restriction. I think it was down to 50. And then on Monday it was down to 10, which, you can't have any meetings when there's 10. And as I mentioned, I mean, everything was canceled. Our industry has never seen just this canceled the way we did that first week, that week of March 16th. Within 48 hours, the Classic Center had over $1 million of business that had canceled. We've now had over $2 million of business canceled, with an economic impact of more than 10 million. That is lost due to COVID in our community. And everything was off the calendar. So we very quickly had to come up with a strategy for how do we respond to this. And I'm really proud of the way the team here, what they did. Hannah Smith is our marketing director, and she created just this great resource page on our website, visit athensga.com, that we're continuing to update, and but very quickly just responded with resources around restaurants and events and festivals, and it was just changing so quickly. And our sales team, of course, was just working around the clock to manage the cancellations and communicate with the hotels and our housing group about all of these cancellations that were coming off. And of course, at the time, we didn't know if they were just postponements or cancellations. We didn't know that there was just so many moving parts. So as an industry and as a CVB, we worked very quickly to change our strategy and the way we were working. And of course, when you aren't marketing for tourism, you're looking for new ways to promote kind of your resources and get the people the information that people needed. And that meant for us, what do our residents need to know right now? And that was what's canceled, what's open, who's doing delivery services, what are the resources that Athens Clarke County Unified Government is putting out. Just trying to kind of be a funnel of resources. Very quickly it became apparent that this impact was going to have a devastating impact on COVID was going to have a devastating impact on our budget, which is 100% funded from hotel motel tax.
Right.
So when no one's staying in the hotels, there's no revenue coming in. And so my first week, I started on a Monday, and on Friday, I presented a revised budget for the next 3 months. And we had to make some tough decisions as an organization, and in order to survive. Those aren't decisions anyone wants to have to make, but we had to really make some hard and tough decisions around our marketing strategies, our staffing, our just trying to survive.
Well, and I know that the staffing decisions are especially painful, not only because they're painful in any scenario, but because anytime I've visited the CVB, there's a very congenial kind of family environment amongst the staff. And so I imagine that there was a lot of pangs of guilt and frustration wrapped up in that as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we're an organization, and this, working in a small organization, you become a family.
Right.
And these people, they're extremely talented. It's some really wonderful talent. We still do. I shouldn't say we didn't, but we've got wonderfully talented people. And it has been tough on that. But again, you just have to. We're all in survival mode.
Right.
Personally, professionally, organizationally, we're all just like, the reality of what was happening was coming at us so fast.
Right.
And you're just trying to keep your head above water and say, okay, how am I going to get to next month? If I have no revenues coming in this month, and of course we have reserves, and more information was coming out about PPP, and we were learning more about that. But to this date, CVBs have not been eligible for PPP funding. And so we have not, been able to apply for anything like that.
Katie, I'm fascinated whenever I speak to someone like you in a leadership position about one thing in particular, and it's probably the most personal question I ask in these interviews, and I hope it's not too prying, but anyone I know who's leading a team or leading an organization had to manage either days or hours or minutes of panic, where there was some moment where you went, oh, this is really coming, and I'm really gonna have to deal with it, and no one's coming to save the day. It's my job to recalibrate my organization. I know that for me, I kept thinking it had left, and then it would come back again, or with these new challenges. And it's hard because to your team and to the public, your job often is to present a level of confidence, to present a level of competence that is encouraging to people, that is inspiring to people. So, what did you draw on? Because I have to tell you, Katie, every conversation I've had with you throughout this whole experience, you have seemed so calm and level and optimistic and forward thinking. But what have you drawn on to manage the pressure of this moment?
Well, for one, the hospitality community and the CVB community is extremely tight-knit. And so I've got some wonderful, not just colleagues, but dear friends who are with, Lisa Anders at the Gwinnett CVB, and Cookie Smoke at the ATL Airport District. Jennifer Cruz in Sandy Springs are really wonderful friends and mentors and colleagues. And so we were all on the phone a lot about, how are you handling this? How are you doing? Just offering support. our GACVB, Georgia Association of CVBs, became a organization that we all leaned on, and we would get on Zoom calls, which we all know became the norm. And it wasn't even like we had a topic. It was just to get on and say, how are you doing? What are things looking like? Because of course, not only were we making these really tough decisions, but we were also, all of us as a world, were dealing with the reality of, are we going to know someone who gets COVID?
Right.
And how do we, my friend Rochelle in Albany, she's the CVB director in Albany, she lost 5 people in one day.
Wow.
And so she was dealing with, of course, the tough decisions of tourism, but also the personal impact that this pandemic has had on us as individuals.
Wow.
But you lean on your network, and then personally, I mean, my dad and my husband are my 2 sort of sounding boards for anything work-wise, and they were a great support team. But to be honest, Tommy, in those early 6 weeks, we were still living in Roswell, and
Right.
so I initially thought I was going to be commuting every day for 6 weeks until we moved. I guess it was about 4 weeks, but it turned out I was at home, and so then we were dealing with moving, and so there almost really wasn't time to think about
Right.
what's
Right.
happening. It was just you just sort of got in this mode of survival and moving things forward. So it's been interesting, and moving during a pandemic is a whole other very interesting process.
I can imagine. If we have time, we should document that for future generations. I want to just say here, I see a comment here from Bryn Meredith Adamson. She actually gave 2, and I'll kind of share them with you. This is interesting, and I'm wondering how you feel about it, Katie. She said, probably advantageous for you being new that you weren't as attached to various items in the budget since you probably had to cut things. It is amazing to hear about all this from your perspective. Thank you for sharing your experience. So, Bryn, thank you for the latter words of encouragement. Katie, I imagine Bryn is probably right here on some level. You had to make some tough, probably surgical choices, objective choices about the budget. Did it help that you were new and that you were able to kind of view things through a more objective lens?
Probably so. I mean, from a staffing perspective, though, I had gotten to know the team here. Many of them
Right.
I had known from many years. Just again, the Georgia tourism industry is so small and tight knit. But I think I was able to come in with probably a more objective viewpoint than I would have. And I've thought a lot about this, about how I would have dealt with things, or what it would have been like to have gone through this in Dunwoody, where I spent 10 years, and what decisions would have had to have been made there. So, possibly, but I think in a leadership role, when things get this dire as they have in hospitality and in tourism, you just don't really have a choice. You're having to make really severe decisions. And we're seeing this, it's not just CVBs. I mean, you look at companies like Marriott. I mean, their CEO has had to make really difficult decisions. Delta, and the ripple effect that this is having on every industry, every company that touches hospitality in some way. You just have to do what you do and trust that this is not forever. We're having to make decisions that keep us alive right now so that we can come back and rescale when the resources allow.
Bryn closed by just saying, words absolutely meant to encourage and support. So, Bryn, thank you for those words.
Thank you.
Katie, I'm going to take 60 seconds, thank our annual sponsors, and then I have some very targeted COVID questions.
Okay.
I see we have our audience here. Give us, to my audience, give us 60 seconds to thank our annual sponsors, and we're going to continue with Katie here. So thank you, Katie. So as I mentioned, today is one of 55 episodes that we have in this series. Later today, we have a very special episode. We were already scheduled to speak to Athens Clarke County Commissioner Allison Wright. On a previous episode, we had been scheduled to speak to Commissioner Vita Thornton, but had to postpone. We will actually have both Commissioner Thornton and Commissioner Wright on the same chat this afternoon. So we hope you'll come back at 1 o'clock. Then tomorrow, Rashi from Rashi's Cuisine. Thursday, Mayor Dodd Farrell of Winterville. And then we'll wrap up on Friday with Commissioner Mariah Parker. And so we hope that you'll continue to join us. You've heard us mention a couple times on this chat that the partnership Historic Athens has with the CVB is through the Athens Welcome Center, which we operate with their guidance and their encouragement and strategic partnership. And so right now, that Welcome Center staff, as Katie mentioned, we're all trying to find new ways to welcome people around Athens and people that are stretching their legs, walking, running, and exploring. The Welcome Center staff has been part of that. So every weekday at 2 o'clock, you can tune in for a live cast that they are broadcasting to welcome you to different historic sites around Athens and offer virtual workshops. So we hope that you'll turn into that Facebook page at 2 o'clock. We are thanking at this time all of our annual sponsors. We're a 52-year-old 501c3 nonprofit. Our bills still arrive every month, COVID or not. And so we do appreciate that these sponsors believed in us. It allows us to keep our lights on, allows us to continue to keep our team employed. If you'd like to become a sponsor or you'd like to become one of our members, especially now that we're gearing up for our annual member meeting, it's the perfect time to join. Membership begins at only $5 a month. You can find out more about how to become a sponsor or a member at historicathens.com. And then just two last quick notes, and then we're going to bring Katie on the line. We are in the midst of our 51st annual Historic Athens Preservation Awards. Typically, that culminates in one night at the Morton. Instead, we're actually able to take more time with our award winners. We encourage you to tune in tonight at 6 p.m. We're going to be doing a deep dive interview with the folks behind Tweed Recording, who won for Outstanding Rehabilitation, and then also the authors of Across the River, an incredible book, a tome of a book about East Athens and the history of East Athens. And so tonight's brought to you by Alex Sam's Realtor, and we really hope that you'll tune in for that. My last thing before breaking back to Katie here is if you're looking for a quick and fun way to support Historic Athens, you can visit historicathens.com and pick up one of our limited edition, locally designed and locally printed t-shirts celebrating 3 historic legacies of Athens, Georgia. And so we'd love for you to do that, and we appreciate that support. All right, Katie, so back to our conversation. There are 3 questions we've been asking each of our guests during these interviews, and I'd like to share them with you now. The first is this. Katie, if you imagine tomorrow this was all over, if I had a magic wand to wave or, a genie in a lamp, this was all over. And you woke up tomorrow, you had the day off, you had no need to social distance, no need to do curbside, as innovative as that's been locally. You could go anywhere, eat anywhere, visit anywhere in Athens, Georgia. How would you spend your day? Oh, sorry, Katie, 1 second. Sorry, 1 second. Do you mind starting your answer once more?
Yes, that's such a great question. And I suppose personally it would depend on if my kids are involved or if not. But one place and it's been interesting, again, moving to a town when nothing is open. We cannot wait to get out and explore. I mentioned that I lived in Athens as a student, but it's so different being here as an adult and raising a family. And we are so excited to get out and explore the parks and the children's garden at the Botanical Gardens, which I hear is this amazing place for children to explore and be outdoors and be active. And so we cannot wait to go there. But I would definitely say the parks and then to try restaurants. I mean, I wish I could just get on a restaurant tour, because people keep telling me about so many new places that are new to me that I cannot wait to try. And so really looking forward to just being out in Athens without having to worry about social distance or, of course we want to be safe. And so but it just cannot wait to get out and really explore more and learn more about the community and just be a part of it. So.
Well, that's good. Well, I'll have to take you out for an exploring day. Exploring Athens is the real Athens experience. It's finding things that you've walked by 100 times that you've meant to go in and finally getting in there. And so, perfect way to spend the day. My second to last question is this. So when we do get out of this situation and we are out of the pandemic, we're likely also nationally and locally going to be crawling our way out of a recession. In the historic preservation world, one of the things we know about recessions is that after a recession, there's usually a lot of pent-up development pressure. Now, we're not anti-development. Everything that we seek to preserve had to be built or developed by somebody. But sometimes that development pressure can spring out all at once. It can endanger historic sites. And so what we've been doing with each of our guests has been asking them to think about, 50 years from now, Katie, if someone was watching this interview at the UGA library and then they were to go out for a day with their family or just to go exploring on their own, what are some of the historic places you're familiar with that you hope they can still visit? What are some of your favorite historic areas? I know you mentioned sense of place, historic places on campus, downtown. What are some of the places that you like to visit?
Well, I hope, first of all, that our downtown will continue to be this historic place of experience where people can walk and enjoy. And I love the idea of what the commission's thinking about with College Square and how people can be there in a place of outdoor enjoyment. And so I hope that the downtown, will continue to be preserved. And I use the word developed lightly, but
Yeah.
as new businesses come in, that it will continue to thrive and develop in a way that is true to its historic nature. And then, I suppose I hope the places places like where the Welcome Center is and some of the other historic buildings are continued to be used as an educational opportunity. And I go back to the word experience, and I don't mean to be cliche about that, but I think that we have an opportunity to use this as an opportunity to think about how these buildings, how people can really immerse themselves in them, and what can they learn while they're in the building, and what are the ways that they can engage with Athens history and our places. So I hope that that's something we can take into the future and can learn from and can move forward. But I think more than anything from this, I hope that we'll just kind of learn what we've learned about. We've all been in quarantine. We all joke that we've been in quarantine for however many days, and we just can't wait to get back out and enjoy some of the simple things like eating in a restaurant and things that we took for granted. And so I hope that as we move forward, we will kind of go back to what it means to just gather with people and to enjoy these experiences that we have so been taking for granted for years and just been having every day. The opportunity to gather with friends and family in a public space and to attend a festival and have these shared interests and shared experiences with total strangers at a concert or at a football game, that we can continue to have those when the time is right and when it's safe to do so, and that we will just be grateful for them that we've got this, because we haven't for so long. We haven't been able to travel. We haven't been able to go to new places or try new things or even do the things that we've wanted to do and we're used to doing. So I'm hoping that people will get back out there and travel confidently and go back into these experiences confidently when the time is right.
Well, we hope so too. So, Katie, our last question is our most open-ended one, but it asks us to think not just 50 years, but 100 years into the future. So if, at the completion of this series, all 55 episodes are being sent over to our local libraries and research institutions. If 100 years from now, Katie, someone's watching this interview, what would you want that person to know about Athens, Georgia at this moment?
So this is a good question. I'm really glad to have the chance to talk about this, because being new to Athens, and I've said this before, being new to Athens, when you come into an organization and into a community amidst a crisis, you immediately see the people in that community and the way they're going to work together. And I hope that people will see Athens as this community that came together and supported its own and created new ways to connect with people. What you're doing with these videos and what the Welcome Center is doing with their live tours, the way that Envision Athens created that Athens Works initiative, and we just really went to support our own and to make sure that our own are safe. And that was what the mayor and commission immediately prioritized, was making sure our community was safe. So I hope people will look at us and go, gosh, they did it right. They came together as a community. They held each other up during the hard times. They prioritized safety, and then they moved forward when it was right and ready. But I just feel really grateful to have been able to be a part of this community and played a tiny role in this, this collaborative effort that Athens has shown during this time of really difficult challenge and hardship for people and our residents and our businesses. But we've also had really great moments, and we've had great leadership during it.
Well, and that leadership includes your approach. So I see one of our joint leaders here. Michelle Nguyen, who's our interim director over at the Athens Welcome Center. I know all of us will be on a call, I think, later today. But Michelle, we appreciate you tuning in. I see we also have Caitlin Short, who is our full-timer over there, tuned in as well. But Michelle just said, what a way to join our community. Katie, I'm sure that hits home for you. It has been an interesting way to join the community, right?
It has. But you know what? We're coming together. I'm thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be working with partners like Historic Athens and the Welcome Center. And we're going to get through this together. We're moving forward. It's going to take some time, creativity, initiative, but I'm confident and excited about what we can do together over the next 18 months as we come out of this.
Absolutely. Caitlin, as I mentioned, just chimed in with a comment along those lines. She just said, grateful to have you with us, Katie. I look forward to seeing what Athens Welcome Center and CVB can accomplish in the future. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Thank you so much, Michelle. Katie, my last comment, and then if you have anything you want to close us out with, please. But, I think back to the first call where I was introduced to you. It was actually the same type of meeting we're going to have this afternoon, which is our Welcome Center committee meeting. And Chuck came on and introduced us to you. And it was so great to hear your energy. I know the folks on the call, Tom Hodgson and others, commented on how great it was that you were hitting the ground running. But what comes to mind today is at one point in that call, you and I have referenced in this episode how unprecedented this situation is. I asked Chuck, in your long tourism career, have you ever faced something like this? And he said, no, and for a very particular reason. He said that it's not that the industry hasn't faced large events or tragedies, but he mentioned, as with events like 9/11, you have a large tragedy like that, and people's instinct is to connect and get together more, wrap their arms around each other. And this one was unique because our limitations had prevented us from doing that. I guess my last comment to you, Katie, is that I think we are now finding ways, even if it's not physically, but personally, to wrap arms and to connect. And we have just really appreciated the ways that you've encouraged our Welcome Center staff to continue welcoming people around the community. You've helped celebrate the live cast and some other innovations that they're brewing over there. But we would just really appreciate your leadership, and we're glad that you're calling Athens home.
Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate the welcome and the collaboration that your team have offered. Certainly thrilled to be working with Michelle and Caitlin, and I think they're brilliant and creative, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the future. Really glad to be in Athens. Again, our family is excited to be here, and we cannot wait to get out there and explore when the time is right. And I also look forward to meeting you in person, because that's been right, the other interesting thing of
this. We have not done that.
I have not met anybody other than kind of my direct team here at the Classic Center in person yet.
Yes.
So excited to do that.
Yes, I'll be excited too. I realize anyone who I've met new since this started, I have no sense of anyone's height. I have no sense of anything except this portion of everyone.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting experience. But Katie, we'll have to have you on some time again and spend a whole episode just talking about what it was like to move during coronavirus.
I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. You and I are going to jump off air. Thank you to everyone that tuned in.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who tunes in later. I know we always have folks that tune in throughout the week. And Katie, one more time, the website where folks can check in with you, that was visitathensga.com. Is that right?
Yes, visitathensga.com, and be sure to find us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you and engage with you there as well.
Great. All right, Katie. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone out there. We'll be back at 1 o'clock with our episode with Commissioners Wright and Thornton. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you then. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.